ITIL 2011 Foundation course from ExcelR Solutions. Before going into ITIL Foundation, let us know about what is ExcelR, what are the courses they're offering. ExcelR is a global leader in IT consulting and professional certification training. They cater their services globally across countries like India, UK, USA, Netherlands, Germany, Malaysia, Indonesia, close to 22 countries. They have a pool of subject matter experts across the globe and the freelance consultants. And they also offer other courses like ITIL Intermediate, ITIL Expert, Prince 2, both Foundation and Practitioner, PMP, Cloud Computing, ISO 27000, ISO 20000, Six Sigma, Business Analytics, and so on and so forth. And now, introduction to ITIL. ITIL stands for IT Infrastructure Library. The full form of ITIL is IT Infrastructure Library. ITIL is all about the collection of best practices pertaining to IT service management. It talks about what are the best practices IT service providers should adopt and adapt in order to deliver IT services to the customers. So while delivering the IT services, what are the best practices these organizations should follow? Like any IT service, to name a few, ATM services is an IT service. Online ticket booking is an IT service. Any service which is rendered using IT is called an IT service. So when these IT services are being delivered to the customer, what are the best practices these organizations should follow? The IT services providers should follow is all about ITIL. How many times you curse that a particular website is not opening, a particular application is not available, or ATM is not working? Online ticket booking is not functioning properly. Why? These organizations, they're not following the best practices. So ITL tells the best practices what organization should follow in order to deliver your IT services seamlessly to the customers without interruptions. That's all about ITIL. And ITIL was owned by OGC one time, Office of Government Commerce, the UK Government Department Office, and subsequently it was owned by Cabinet Office, again the UK Government Department. And currently, ITIL is owned by ExcelR. Now, ITIL is a government private conglomerate. It is owned by government, UK government, as well as a company called Capita. And together, they started this organization called ExcelR to take ITIL forward. And what is the evolution of ITIL? ITIL was initiated in 1980 by Office of Government Commerce. They developed the best practices on how to manage the IT services in 1980. And the first version of ITIL V1 was published in 1989. And then in 2000, ITIL V2 version was published. And 2007, ITIL V3 version was published. And in 2011, they made slight tweaking to 2007, that is V3 version, and they're calling it as ITIL 2011. Remember, ITIL 2011 is not a version, it's an upgrade to ITIL V3. They have done slight tweaking and customization to ITIL V3 and they're calling it as ITIL 2011. This is the history of ITIL. And ITIL qualification scheme, there are different levels in ITIL. The entry level for ITIL starts with ITIL Foundation. This is an entry level if you want to get qualified on ITIL. So this is what we are now, ITIL Foundation we are doing. And the next level is ITIL Intermediate. ITIL Intermediate, you have two streams, ITIL Lifecycle stream and Capability stream. The Lifecycle stream, it contains 5: service strategy, service design, service transition, service operations, and CSI. So each module, you have to undergo 21 hours of training and you have to take an examination. And once you clear the examination of each module, and once you clear all the 5 modules, you can be called as ITIL Intermediate Certified. And each module will give you 3 credits or 3 points against your name. So the moment you complete service strategy, you'll be given 3 credits, service design 3 credits, and so on and so forth. And finally, the moment you complete all life cycle modules, all 5 life cycle modules, you'll be getting 15 credits against your name. And ITIL Foundation will give you 2 credits. The moment you clear the ITIL Foundation examination and you get certified, you'll get 3 credits. Now, we have ITIL capability modules. Capability modules, we have 4 modules: service offerings and agreements, release control and validation, planning, production and optimization, and operational support and analysis. So these are the 4 capability modules you have. What is difference between lifecycle module and capability module? The basic question. Capability module is for the people who wants to implement ITIL process in a day in day out basis. Lifecycle is for the modules who wants to manage the process sitting on the top. So if you are part of implementation of this ITIL process, one should go for capability module. If you are part of management of this process, you should go for lifecycle module. As I told you, each module upon completion, you will be given 3 credits. So 5 into 3, 15 credits is what you would be getting. And I told you 2 credits you will be getting the moment you complete ITIL Foundation. So 5 into 3, 15 credits you will be getting if you complete lifecycle modules. So 17 credits is the eligibility for you to be called as ITIL Intermediate Certified. And capability modules will give you 4 credits. Each module is of 30 hours trial. So 4 into 4, 16 credits you'll be getting. So 2 plus 16, 18 credits you'll be getting if you clear capability modules. So I told you 17 is sufficient to be called as ITIL Intermediate Certified. So depending upon your job requirements, you can choose either lifecycle module or capability module, or you can do a combination of both lifecycle and capability modules if your requirement demands. So at the end of the day, you should get 17 credits, though it is a combination of both, to be called as ITIL Intermediate Certified. And the next level is ITIL Expert. For that, you have to do another training, MALC, Managing Across the Life Cycle, which will give you 5 credits upon completion. So after training, like intermediate modules, you have to take an examination and you have to clear the examination. You'll be given 5 credits. So the moment you get 22 credits, 17 plus 5 or 18 plus 5, 23. If you go through capability modules, it would be 23. If you go through life cycle modules, it would be 22. You would be called as ITIL Expert Certified. ITIL Expert Certified. And then the ITIL Master. ITIL Master, the good news is there's no exam for ITIL Master. You have to submit a thesis or a document on your ITIL implementation, how you have implemented ITIL, what is the tweaking you have done, what is the customization you have done on ITIL, and you will be called for an interview. A panel of experts will test your implementation knowledge and they will award you if they're satisfied with ITIL Master. So this is the qualification scheme pertaining to ITIL. And now ITIL Foundation examination format. It's a foundation certificate in IT service management. It's a multiple choice examination, 40 questions. It's a closed book exam. The duration 60 minutes, 1 hour, and extra 15 minutes if English is not your native language. And the pass mark for this is 65%. So you should get 26 marks out of 40. And ITIL Foundation is a prerequisite for the next levels like ITIL Intermediate and ITIL Expert or ITIL Master. So it's a prerequisite for all further ITIL qualifications. And let us see the course agenda, what you will be learning. We'll be looking into the basics of ITIL, and we'll see how service management should be adapted as a practice, and we'll understand the service lifecycle approach of ITIL. We'll discuss about the generic concepts and definitions, the basics related to ITIL, key principles pertaining to ITIL and models, process, functions, roles, the importance of technology in ITIL, and the competence and training, the importance of competence and training. So these are the objectives and these are the topics which we'll be discussing as part of ITIL. Now let us see the first module, service management as a practice, and what are the key concepts you have to understand related to ITIL before we deep dive into the concepts. What is ITIL? The basic question. We discussed ITIL is all about the best practices on managing your IT services. So how to manage your IT services in order to deliver these IT services to the customers without interruptions. So ITIL is the most widely adopted approach for IT service management across the globe, and it's well accepted by all the IT service providers across the globe. And ITIL provides a practical approach for identifying, planning, delivering, and supporting IT services to the business, to the customers. And what if you follow the best practices? Why should we adapt ITIL? Without ITIL, can't we deliver IT services? Yes, you can deliver the IT services. That's what many IT companies or many IT service providers they do. But it leads to lot of dissatisfaction of the customers. So what if you follow the best practices related to ITIL? It helps in improving your IT services, the quality of the IT services, because these are the best practices which are already tried and tested elsewhere. It helps in reducing the costs. It makes your services cost effective. Maybe you are using 10 resources to deliver an IT service, you can deliver the same IT service with 6 resources. So ITIL helps in reducing the cost over a period of time. ITIL helps in improving the customer satisfaction through a more professional approach. At the end of the day, it's what we are all aiming for. So if you provide quality services, if you provide good availability of IT services, if you provide consistent services to the customers, ultimately it ensures customer satisfaction. You'll be having a delighted customer. And it helps in improving the productivity. It improves the optimization of your skills and experience of your people. So in the IT department, you have so many people. So you can optimize their skills, you can optimize their experience, you can make best use of your resources working in your IT environment. And it helps in managing your vendors well. If you are taking any third party services, let us say you are taking internet services from an internet service provider. So to deliver your IT service, you are dependent on a vendor. So it helps in managing the vendors well. So all these benefits will ultimately result in customer satisfaction, will ultimately result in cost effectiveness, and finally it results in a delighted customer. And why ITIL is so successful? As I told you before, ITIL has been adopted and adapted by many organizations across the globe. In fact, they have the lion's share when it comes to IT service management. Why it is so successful? Why it has been adapted by many organizations? Because ITIL is a best practice. A best practice is something which is tried and tested elsewhere and which is producing results. So when it is a best practice, which is already been implemented elsewhere and it's producing results, it gives a lot of confidence to us. Obviously, it will produce results for you, and therefore ITIL is successful. And ITIL is vendor neutral. ITIL is not linked to any of the technology platform or any of the industry type. It's a vendor neutral. You can implement ITIL in an IT department of a bank, of an airline, of a FMCG company, anywhere, irrespective of the industry. You can implement ITIL anywhere. The only thing you require is you need an IT department or an IT service provider. You can implement ITIL. ITIL is technology neutral. You are providing SAP services, you can use ITIL. You are providing Windows services, you can use ITIL. Storage services, ITIL. Internet services, you can implement ITIL. So, irrespective of the technology, irrespective of the industry where you are in, you can implement ITIL. Therefore, the acceptance by all the industries and by all the technologies made ITIL successful. And ITIL is non-prescriptive. ITIL doesn't mandate anything. There's nothing mandatory as per ITIL. What do you mean by non-prescriptive? Which is not mandatory. Prescriptive is which is mandatory, like a doctor's prescription. What is so good about doctor's prescription? It's mandatory. Whatever the doctor prescribes, you have to use those medicines. Whereas ITIL is non-prescriptive. Whatever you are going to learn, whatever the ITIL defines, you can tweak it. You can customize it as per your requirement. You can leave out something, omit something which is not producing value. It's a framework typically. So ITIL is non-prescriptive. These are the reasons why ITIL is so successful, and it has been adopted and adapted by various organizations across the globe. And also, ITIL helps in delivering value for customers through their services. So, the customer will perceive the value from your service if you follow the best practices that are prescribed by ITIL. It helps in integrating your IT strategy with your customer strategy or business strategy. So, according to the customer needs, you can tweak your IT services and you can align your IT services with the needs of the customer. ITIL helps in provisioning this. And ITIL helps in measuring your performance. ITIL helps in optimizing your performance. The ITIL process will help in managing your investments and budgets, in managing the risks in your IT services at various stages, in managing the knowledge what it has been acquired while you are delivering the service. It helps in reducing the costs and optimizing the services. It helps in overcoming the resistance to the culture in the organization. So, how to overcome the resistance? When you try to bring in some change, when you try to implement some best practices, ITIL will help it. And it helps in building good relationship with the customers and the business, which is very, very important as an IT service provider. So these are the various benefits, myriad benefits what you get if you implement ITIL. So we have been discussing that ITIL are best practices. So what is a best practice? Best practices are tried and tested, which are proven, that has been successfully used by multiple organizations across the globe and are producing results. So what are the sources of best practice? Public frameworks. The public will contribute. And remember, ITIL is a public framework. It's the world which has contributed to the evolution of ITIL. We all contributed towards the evolution of ITIL. Various organizations, various IT service providers. Though the onus has been on ExcelOs and previously with OGC and Cabinet Office, we all contributed. So they collated these best practices across the organizations across the globe and from various standards, from various proprietary knowledge of various organizations, right? So any best practice, these are the sources, and even ITIL, for ITIL also, these are the sources. So what are the sources for any best practice? If you see various standards like ISO standards, you can pull some aspects from ISO standards. Industry practices, the practices that are followed by various organizations across the globe. Best practices followed in Microsoft, best practices followed in Oracle, best practices followed in IBM, best practices followed in HP. So from various industries, you can get the best practices. These are sources of best practice. Academic research as part of the research in universities. They'll come up with the best practices. That is one of the sources of best practices. Training and education. That's what you are doing now. You are learning the best practices through training, through education, and internal experience. The best practices you will know over a period of time when you work on a job. If you work for 10 years in an organization, your internal experience will tell you which is best, which is not. This is one of the sources of best practices. And we have enablers to implement these best practices. Like employees, you need support from everyone if you want to implement the best practices. Like employees, customers, suppliers, consultants, the advisors from outside. You need the help of technology if you want to implement the best practice. And you have drivers. Why do you go for a best practice? You need some drivers. It's the substitutes. Customers. Sometimes customer will ask you, you have to implement the best practice, or he'll give some requirement. In order to achieve that requirement, you need to implement the best practice. So customers could be the drivers. The regulators, the government regulations may drive you towards implementing the best practice. And in various scenarios, you implement best practice, like to overcome the competition. You have a competitor who is implementing the best practices. So obviously you have to do that. Sometimes you have to ensure the compliance. There may be some audits by regulatory bodies. So you will follow the best practices, or related to some commitments what you are committed to your customer. These are the various scenarios under which you will embrace best practices in any organization. Now let us see the difference between proprietary and public frameworks, proprietary knowledge and public frameworks. As we briefly discussed before, public frameworks are the frameworks which are developed by the contribution of the public, which are already implemented in various scenarios in various organizations, and which are developed by the contributions of the public. Whereas proprietary frameworks, these frameworks are proprietary knowledge, they are inbuilt in the organizations. Suppose in your organization, you came up with your own best practices, own process, based on the requirements of your organization, based on the context of your organization, you developed your own process, own framework. That is proprietary framework. That is confined only to your organization. Whereas public frameworks are the frameworks which are developed by the contributions of the public, collated the information from various sources of the public, and they develop it. That's a public framework. What is the difference? Which is better, a proprietary framework or proprietary knowledge, or a public framework? Proprietary frameworks, they are tailor-made for those organizations. So it's difficult to adopt or adapt or transfer for all the organizations across the globe. It may fit only to your organization according to the size, according to the culture of the organization. If you try to replicate it in other organizations, it may not produce the result because that was tailor-made for your organization. It is more customized, and even the documentation is not much available if it is a proprietary framework. And proprietary frameworks comes at a cost. If I want to replicate, if I want to copy the proprietary framework or knowledge of your organization, you expect some compensation. So the owners expect to be rewarded for their investments in developing this knowledge or framework. Unlike public frameworks, they're already validated across organizations, cultures, environments, and contexts. They are tried and tested in various organizations of various sizes. So it's like a ready to use thing. You can customize it, you can tweak it, but it's already proven in various contexts, in various organizations. So since the validation is done, the chances for the success will be more. And public training and certification is available. Like ITIL is a public framework. I told you we all contributed to the development of ITIL. So a lot of public trainings will be available. That's what you are undergoing now. And certifications will be available. If you take proprietary framework, if you want to get trained on that framework, you have to join in that organization. Then only you will be gaining the knowledge related to the proprietary framework. Unlike public framework, public trainings are available and widely distributed among a large community of professionals. Many professionals will be practicing these public frameworks, and thereby the availability of skills, the availability of resources related to a public framework will be better than proprietary frameworks. And now let us see the ITIL service lifecycle approach. What ITIL says is a service should be seen as an entity which has a life cycle. A service will have a life cycle. The start of the service, the inception of the service, and till retirement, you'll have 5 stages. Somewhere the service has to be started sometime. For example, let us say in your organization they started email service. Till now there is no email. Everyone is writing on a piece of paper and they're putting in the post box. Now your organization has decided to start email service. So that's the start of email service. That's when the email service inception, the start. Someday, sometime, the service will be retired. Can an IT service be retired? Yes. For example, if you take pager services, some 20 years back, we used to have pagers. Now you don't see pagers after the advent of mobile. So the pager services were retired. So if any IT service, if it is not producing value, it can be retired, it can be stopped. So from the start of an IT service till the retirement of an IT service, you have 5 stages. What are those 5 stages? Service strategy, service design, service transition, service operations, and continual service improvement. So service strategy is the first stage, service design is the second stage, service transition, service operations, and continual service improvement. Continual service improvement. So what ITIL says is don't start any service abruptly. First you develop a strategy. What IT services should we start as an IT service provider? Or what changes to an existing IT service we should make? First you develop a strategy. Look into the investment. Assume that your IT organization want to start email services. So for these email services, what is the investment it goes into? What is the return on investment, ROI? What is the VOI, value on investment, the intangible benefits what a service can impart? ROI is the tangible benefits what a service can impart. What is the demand for this IT service? How can we produce value with this IT service in the minds of the customer? What should be the differentiators we should give in our service to outbid the competition? Develop a strategy first, and then based on that you take a decision whether a service has to be started or not. So the strategy will take a go no go decision whether a new service has to be started or whether we have to make changes to an existing service. You wanted to decide, you wanted to migrate from Windows XP to Windows 8. Is it worth migrating from Windows XP to Windows 8? Is that investment is worth doing? You have to strategize. And once you decide on your decision, then you have to design the new service, or you have to design the change, or you have to design the retirement of the service. So service design is all about developing a detailed plan about your new service or changes in an existing service. Assume that as part of strategy, you decided to start email services. Now you have to design the email service. You have to design the features of email service. What should be there in an email service? Incoming email provision, outgoing. We need a trash option. We need chatting option. So what are the features and functionality? The service solution we will design here. What should be the technology architecture? How many servers are required? How many servers should I put globally? How many servers should I put in different locations? How many servers in US? How many servers in Singapore? What is the network topology? What is the intranet bandwidth? What is the internet bandwidth? You design everything. You design the measurement systems related to this email service. You design the process related to email service. So you will design everything on a piece of paper or a bunch of papers. And that bunch of papers where it contains the blueprint of your service is called SDP, Service Design Package. SDP, Service Design Package, is nothing but a soft copy or a hard copy where it contains the design of your service. The package which contains the design of your service, Service Design Package. It's a blueprint of your service. There's nothing in this world. Everything is on paper. A detailed plan is there on paper. So that is SDP. And once the design is done, then you have to put it under transition. That is service transition. Transition is all about BTRD primarily. What do you do under transition? We do BTRD. Build, test, release, and deploy. You will build the service. So your design says we need 10 servers for this email. Now you have to procure these 10 servers, put the necessary OS on it, put the necessary applications on it. You have to build your email service. Then you have to test it. Once the testing is successfully done, you will release it. Release in a layman's language, we can say ready to use. You have tested and this entity is definitive in nature and it's ready to use. And deployment is rolling over to live, putting under operations, putting under usage. You are physically deploying on the environment. So transition is all about BTRD, build, test, release, and deployment. And then operations. Operations starts. Operations is a stage where the business or the customers will start using your service. So your email service is transition to live and your customers will start using your email service. Now, in operations, what do you do as a service provider? What is your primary motive? You have to make sure that your IT services are delivered without interruptions. Your email service is delivered without interruptions. For that, you do monitoring, you do maintenance, you do health checks, and you make sure that the services are delivered without interruptions. Despite your efforts, sometimes the services may go down. Then you have to restore these services to normal as soon as possible, and you have to fix on a permanent basis those activities you'll be doing under service operations. So once the operations are on, are you going to relax? No, you have to improve your services. That is continual service improvement. And this improvement should happen on a continual basis. Remember, it's not continuous service improvement, it's continual service improvement. What is continual service improvement? Continual service improvement is the improvement you do intermittently, you give a break and you improve, that is continual. So you improve, stabilize the improvement, do a retrospection, again you improve, stabilize the improvement. This is continual service improvement. It's not continuous. What is difference between continuous and continual then? This is continuous, no stoppage. So in continually you have intermittent breaks and it's a continual service improvement. You have to stabilize the improvements and you have to periodically do a retrospection and then you have to take the improvements forward. It's a continual service improvement. And if you see this diagram, you see service strategy is forming the linchpin of this entire IT service lifecycle wheel. In the center of the wheel, you have a linchpin. So service strategy is the linchpin. Everything is driven by service strategy. The entire life cycle is driven by service strategy. If strategy decides we are going to provide global service, then your design will be at a global level. If strategy decides we are going to provide service in only in North America, then your design will differ. If strategy says we are going to provide only in the US, the design will change. If strategy says we have sufficient money, go ahead, then your design may contain the state of the art solutions, latest technology you may use while you are designing the service. If there are some financial constraints which strategy will tell you, your design may be of open source with outdated solutions, right? Everything is dependent on strategy. Strategy will set the expectations and the priorities. Accordingly, you will design, accordingly, you will do the transition, and you do the operations and your improvements. So, based on the feedback from strategy or inputs from strategy, you will design the service. And once the service is designed, then you will put it in the transition. The design has to be transitioned. You have to build the design, test it, release it, and deploy it. And then you push it to operations. So the transition services, you put it into operations. And based on the customer feedback, you will revisit your designs, your transitions, your strategies, and you make amends to that. For example, while the operations is on, you'll ask the customer, how is the service? The customer expresses his dissatisfaction. So you will go and check, is there something to do with my design? Should I change the design? Instead of 2 servers in Europe, should I place 2 servers in India? So he may change the design. Once the design is changed, you have to put under transition. And then you have to put into operations. So it's a cycle. That's the reason we call it as a service life cycle. And this life cycle approach has been taken in V3, version 3. Till that time, we never had a life cycle approach till V2. So, and if you see continual service improvement, it is surrounding all the stages. It is having a holistic approach, an integrated approach on all the stages. Why? Because you can improve any stage of your service life cycle. There's room for improvement everywhere. You can improve your strategies, you can improve your designs, you can improve your transitions, you can improve your operations. So CSI is not confined to operations. Don't think after operations we come up with CSI. CSI, it has its tentacles spread across all the stages. Your service strategy, your service design, your service transition, service operations, everywhere. So this is a life cycle approach of an IT service. And ITL recommends that a IT service should be taken a life cycle approach. So from the start of the service till the retirement of the service, you have these stages and you have to revisit these stages and you have to perform these stages till the time the service is retired. Now let us look into the ITR core publications. The core publications are the main publications published by ITIL, which provides the structure, stability, and strength to IT service management, and which contains the principles, methods, and various tools in order to manage your services. And there are 5 core publications: service strategy, service design, service transition, service operations, and continual service improvement. These are the 5 books, the core publications as per to ITIL. Now let us see the fundamental definitions of what is service, what is an outcome, what is service management. The definition of service is a service is means of delivering value to customers. So the customer should feel value out of your service. It's not delivering some entity. Service is all about delivering value to customers. How do you deliver value to customers? By facilitating. As a service provider, you will facilitate, you will help outcomes customer wants to achieve. Customer wants to achieve some outcome, and that is the reason he's coming to you for service. So you will facilitate those outcomes what the customer wants to achieve. Let us say, for example, you hired a newspaper agency to deliver newspaper to your house. So the newspaper agency is facilitating the outcome called newspaper, which you wanted to achieve. You wanted to have a newspaper, and The service provider, the newspaper agency, is helping you, is facilitating you to achieve that outcome called newspaper. And you want to achieve it as a customer without ownership of specific costs and risks. And you want to achieve this newspaper without taking the ownership of risks. So while delivering the newspaper, if there are any risks, that should be managed by the service provider. You will not take those risks. If it rains while delivering the newspaper, it is taken care by the service provider. You are not going to worry about the risks. You don't take ownership of those risks. At the same time, you don't take the ownership of specific costs. Specific cost is typically the delivery cost. The delivery cost in order to deliver the service. The delivery costs are borne by the service provider. Assume that the newspaper agency says it rained heavily in the last 1 month, so we hired a BMW car and we delivered the newspaper. So pay another $1,000 more. Are you going to pay? No. You are not worried about the delivery costs. So the delivery costs and the risks, they are addressed by the service provider. You are worried only on the outcome. So service is means of delivering value to customers. How do you deliver value? By facilitating outcomes customer want to achieve without ownership of specific costs and risks. What do you mean by an outcome? The result of carrying on an activity. So if you do some activity, you get some result out of it, that's called outcome. And now let us see the definition of service management. Service management means managing the services. How do you do that? By your organizational capabilities. By using your capabilities, you provide value to the customer in the form of services. That's nothing but service management. It's important for the examination, one of the frequently asked questions. So service management is a set of organizational capabilities to provide value to customers in the form of services. So how do you provide value in the form of services? How? By using your capabilities. So that's all about service management. And now let us see what is IT service management. The previous definition is a generic service management definition. Now we see IT service management definition. IT service management is nothing but managing your IT services. So you will manage the IT services so that your customer needs are met. And how do you manage it? By a proper mix of people, process, and technology. Remember, service is made up of only these three. PPT, people, process, and technology. So in order to manage your IT services, you need people, you need process, and you need technology. So the delivery of IT services by using the mix of this people, process, and information technology is nothing but your IT service management. And you will manage the IT in the business perspective, in the customer perspective, and thereby you try to create value. And what do you mean by IT service provider? A service provider who provides IT services is an IT service provider. You can be an internal service provider or external service provider. If you are providing IT services to your own business units, you are an internal IT service provider. If you are providing IT services to a different organization which is legally different, that's an external service provider. That's an external customer. You have service companies like IBM. They provide IT services to external customers. So they're external service providers. Like Infosys, external service provider. At the same time, all the businesses of late, they're having an internal IT department. These internal IT department, they provide IT services to their own customers, the internal IT customers. So when you are trying to understand the concepts of IT, ITIL, you have to understand in two perspectives. One, you are delivering IT services to your own customers, to your own business unit. Let us say you are an IT service provider of Citibank. In Citibank, we have marketing, we have sales, we have finance, we have banking, different departments will be there. And there will be an internal IT department. So you will be providing IT services to their business, to these business units. So here you are an internal IT service provider and you are providing IT services to internal customer. If you are an external service provider, you are providing services to external customers like Infosys, HP. They are all external service providers. They provide services to external customers. So you have to understand ITIL in both the perspectives. Most of the topics what we discuss will be in an internal IT perspective, that you are providing IT services to your own customers, and few topics which we discuss you can relate to an external IT service provision. And now let us understand the other basic concept called stakeholders. What do you mean by stakeholder? Normally in finance, we use the word stakeholder. We hear the word stakeholder. Who has stake or some share in organization is called a stakeholder. Here the definition of a stakeholder says anyone who has an interest in the organization or a project or an activity. If you are interested, anyone who can influence the activity or who can be influenced by the activity is a stakeholder. And that influence can be negative or positive. Assume that you are a team member. Your performance may negatively or positively impact your IT service. You are a stakeholder. And your customer, by your service, he may be negatively or positively impacted. So he's a stakeholder. So anyone who is getting impacted or who is impacting either negatively or positively is called a stakeholder. And we have two types of stakeholders: internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholder is your own team members, your other project team members who are part of delivering the service. These are internal stakeholders. External stakeholders are your customers, users, vendors. These are the few examples related to external and internal stakeholders. And what is the difference between user, customer, and supplier? Let us try to understand about your external stakeholders. What is difference between a customer and user? A customer is the one who pay the money for the goods or services is called a customer. End user or user is the one who uses the service on a day-to-day basis, is called end users. For example, let us say you are an external service provider. You are from a company called Infosys. You are providing ATM services to a customer called Citibank. And these ATM services are being used by the account holders and the depositors of Citibank. Account holders and the depositors of Citibank. So for Infosys, Citibank is a customer. The IT head of Citibank who makes the payment to Citibank, who is buying the services from Infosys, is a customer. And the end users who uses these ATM services, the account holders and the depositors, maybe we are all the end users. Sometimes customers can be the end users as well, or the end users can be customers. And then suppliers. Any third party who is supplying goods or services that are required to deliver IT services is called a supplier or vendor. ITIL emphasizes a lot on supplier management. ITIL says you have to take care of your suppliers. You have to manage your suppliers well, because if they don't perform, you will breach your SLAs. Your service delivery will be impacted. For example, you are taking internet from an external ISP, internet service provider. If the internet services are down and if his supplies are not good, your SLAs will be breached. Your services will be impacted, right? So for everything of late, we are dependent on external vendors. For internet, you are dependent on external vendor. For laptops, you are dependent on external vendor. You have to buy from outside. For network, routers, switches, you are dependent on infrastructure companies. Servers, you have to buy from outside. Human resources, you have dependent on vendor who will supply these human resources to you. So the supplier or a vendor will have a huge impact on your service delivery. So ITL says you have to manage your suppliers well. It emphasizes a lot on supplier management. And as we discussed earlier, we'll see the difference between internal and external customers. Internal customers are the customers who work for the same business as the IT service provider. So the IT service provider and the customer who is using these IT services is an internal customer for you. External customers, the customers who work for different business, different legal entities. So the IT service provider is from a different company and the customer is from a different company. Such customers are called external customers, right? So this diagram depicts